newspapers. Let's talk about electricity and the Punch newspaper leading with the subsidy increase, that is the cost of subsidies from about the 220% increase from what, 660 billion to 1.9 trillion from 2023 to 2024. Question, of course, is with the Electricity Act that has been signed by President Tinubu and the Electricity Regulatory Commission now, handing over oversights to a number of states. How do we get investments there? So very happy to have Mojisola Hunponu-Wusu, who of course is the president of Woodhall Capital Group, to discuss that with us. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show. So how can states raise funding for electricity projects?
Well, we were talking earlier and we said even God said, let there be lights, right?
Yes.
So lights, it's a prelude to growth.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone wants to start work, and the sun comes up in the morning because it's time for work.
Right.
So when states go out to fund, they need to look at where the different pockets of funding are. And they need to look at where the incentives are.
Yeah.
Regulatory framework is a huge thing. And that's what international and local investors will be looking at. So the Electricity Commissions Act that was signed in, clearly a green signal to international and local investors that come and invest. When you then go down and look through it, you need to look at, as you said earlier, 1.94 trillion of subsidies. Only 330 million of that was paid. 1.94 trillion, that's an increase of 220% year on year from 2023. So if 330 million of that was paid, it means that there's a deficit. There's a debt overhang of 1.64.
Yeah.
It shows that there's a disruption in the funding, the pathway to it. Because if the markets and the government is still owing other investors at 1.64, there's an overhang.
Yeah.
So new investors coming in will need to be clear on where those start, how their new investments will be ring-fenced vis-a-vis what the new investors are. So, of course, states will be looking at their current debt profiling, the transparency of debts, their statements, their budgets, and even the purchase payment agreements. Can they be ring-fenced? Are they enforceable?
Yeah. So
those are some of the things you need to address internally before you go out to speak to local or international investors.
And that's what you guys at Woodhall do all the time. What about some of the challenges that the states might face in securing funding for these projects?
Okay, so we've said one of them, which is the regulatory framework. Governments has actually passed the acts. They now need to domesticate those acts within their states, intra-state, and make sure that those that passed, Lagos State has done that. In December 2024, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu passed the Lagos State Act, act into a bill. And so signaling to investors, come and invest. Lagos State is ready. And you can see with the Dangote, they're already producing 1,500 megawatts of the 4,000 megawatts that the whole country produces. Although, of course, we have capacity for 35 megawatts.
Yeah.
So 35,000 megawatts. So, the state is ready. The state needs to domesticate the bill or the act into law in their individual states. Of course, some of the other issues are transparency in the actual statements and budgets and the accounts of the firm. Are they readily available? Can they actually be verified? You also need to see where private sector comes in. There's a capacity, the technical capacity in intrastates for some of these investors come in. If you do deploy funds into it, how will they be deployed? How will those projects actually be enacted? So there's technical capability check that needs to be done for each state that actually receives the funding. Okay,
so in terms of trying to make sure there's a bankable environment for this to happen, I guess the states would, what would have to happen? Because I know the subsidy thing, if you're an investor coming in and you hear subsidies, I don't know if you'll be that, likely to want to come in there. So what about the environment itself for each of the respective states?
Okay, so of course, first of all, to get investors in, you need to actually get investors like what we do at Woodhall Capital. Of course, you know that we raise international funding. We're a financial services firm. We raise international funding for corporates, for financial institutions, and for sovereigns.
Right.
Why is this important across these three sectors? We are best placed, of course, to make sure that we're attracting investors that understand the terrain. You have to make sure that the investors have track record in actually investing in emerging markets. We need patient capital. We need investors that understand the bottlenecks that exist here. Not because we want them to condone it, but we want them to actually be able to be patient enough to work through those issues. There's nothing Nigeria is going through right now that they haven't seen in other climes.
Right.
So making sure that those investors have had experience in emerging markets and they are conscious and they're ready for some of the issues that may come up and to work with us to make sure that some of those bottlenecks are taking place across the three sectors, with corporates, with financial institutions, and certainly with the government.
Okay, so any examples of some states that have, tread that path and got some success?
Absolutely. I said earlier, Lagos State has
Yeah.
actually signed the act into a bill. December 2024, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu did that. And of course, as you can see, the knock-on effect is that you would see local investors, private public partnerships. And I talked about the Dangote refinery. They're actually running their own private power generation company.
Yeah.
And again, I said they're producing almost half of what is produced countrywide. So when the state is ready, when they've actually commercialized it and localized those initiatives, then private sector, local investors and international investors will see that as a signal and come in and invest.
Do you have confidence that other states outside Lagos can? Because we're gonna after this we have a tourism segment next, and again the focus is Lagos.
Yeah.
Yesterday we were talking to somebody in agriculture. Again, the focus is just Lagos. Lagos keeps coming up. What about the other states and their viability?
Other states, absolutely. We at Woodhall Capital, we just signed an MOU with the Nigerian Governors Forum.
Yeah.
We are taking them on a roadshow to London, to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi. Our job in that situation is to actually highlight the states that are ready. Some states are somewhere in between it, and we have to make sure that they're ready before we go on the road.
Yeah.
Impressing on the legislation that we need to do certain things before we go on the road, because these questions will be asked. So there are states that are in some level of readiness, and our job as private sector, as financial services firm, is to impound on them the need for us to be ready before we go on the road.
Hey, this is the entire focus of the initiative. Are you confident that you're going to have a good forum and there'll be enough interest from the different...
I have no doubt. Look, Nigeria,
We can sell Nigeria.
Yes, again, you don't need to sell it. You just need to highlight some of the issues, some of the opportunities that are there. There's no place like this to actually invest in right now. We need to tell the story properly and make sure that we're not exaggerating some of the issues that are there. We are open and transparent about them, but making sure that we're speaking to investors, as I said, that are used to emerging markets issues and bottlenecks, and making sure that we're speaking like to like for those kind of investors.
So do you think we'll have... Well, 24/7 power is a bridge too far, but do you think we'll see, here's my final question for you, will we see over the next, year, 2 years or something, will you think we'll have gradual investment and improvement in the electricity sector, I guess, at the state level?
I do.
Yeah?
If investors are still coming, it's because they have hope, they think there's something here, and I think we just need to join what we see with what they want, and I think you will see. In the next 2 years, absolutely. Maybe not 24/7, but you'll see an increase. We're already seeing an increase.
Right,
People are not saying enough of it.
Right.
We're already seeing an increase, and then just working with the various stakeholders, being patient and making sure that you're working with them in a positive attitude to make sure that some of these policies are seen through.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Mojisola Hunponu-Wusu, President of Woodhall Capital Group. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.